What's going on, everybody? It is your boy Zamboni. I am an herbalist and astrologer, and it is time to talk about the astrology of the week ahead. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for supporting in all of the ways that you do that. Thank you for joining the Patreon. Thank you for hanging out with me every week, every day, every month when I write do all these forecasts. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for getting a reading. Thank you for sending me a tip via Venmo, Cash App, PayPal. Thank you for hitting this like button or the save button here in the corner. Thank you for all of these things. Let's talk about the astrology of the week ahead. So this week, Happy New Year, by the way. Also, Happy New Moon. So fittingly, at the beginning of the year, we have a nice big important new moon. Now this is a kind of new moon. It's a new moon in Capricorn. Sun is in Capricorn, moon is in Capricorn at the same time. Also Mercury is in Capricorn, also Pluto is in Capricorn, also Venus retrograde is in Capricorn. In fact, Venus retrograde is going to move back in Capricorn while the sun is moving forward, and this week they're going to conjoin. So we're going to get a Venus cazimi. Remember that cazimi means in the heart of the sun. So Venus is going to move retrograde and catch up to the sun here, and so we're really looking at and so alongside this new moon here, whenever we think about a new moon, we can think about planting a seed of some sort. We can think about starting something, some kind of new beginning, something like this, right? But because we've got so much, and Capricorn is kind of a backward-facing sign in the first place. It's very concerned with tradition and convention and the old ways of doing things, and that fits really well here, especially we've got Venus retrograde. Really looking back, like 8 years ago, what happened 8 years ago, and we can look through there are all these different ways of like thinking with cycles and stuff. I super recommend. My friend Palace just put out a Venus retrograde book, and it's super dope. It's really great. I've been working with it, and there are some really good ways of thinking about cycles. And when we think about cycles and the recurring nature of time and event space, then this is a good way to think with this new moon, because this new moon is here with Venus retrograde. Retrograde Venus in the first place is always going to be thinking about going into the depths and maybe looking back at some of the things that have been taking place, some of the things that maybe haven't been as delicious as Venus tends to like them, and sort of thinking with that and sort of engaging all that stuff. I've been talking about Pluto and hierarchy and control systems and all this sort of stuff. This is likely to show up with this new moon. And so whenever we think about a new moon, then we can think about planting a seed that then goes on to for the month, for this 28-day cycle, then we see it going around and sort of growing and turning into something. We also see this sort of year-long situation pretty soon, and by pretty soon I mean in 6 months, we're going to have a full moon in Capricorn as well, which will sort of serve as the culmination of whatever cycle comes up now. So this Capricorn stuff, this thinking practically, or thinking with the utility of power dynamics and how are they working, and then all this sort of stuff seems to show up in a really big way here. Also this week, Mercury is going to move from Capricorn into Aquarius. This is particularly interesting for a couple of reasons. First, 0 degrees of Aquarius has been a pretty pretty active area or point in the sky for a couple of years now. We had the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, the great conjunction there at the end of 2020. We had a Mars-Saturn conjunction there. We're going into we're going to have a Mercury cazimi very close to this. We're going to have a Venus-Mars conjunction at that point, where this is a place in the sky which speaks to the future that we're moving into. And so as Mercury makes it into this space, then we're going to see something about trying to communicate with that, trying to communicate around that, trying to understand that, we can remember that Mercury is the magician as well, and we can think about how communication and word is associated with magic or whatever, right? This idea of like trying to go out into the world and make stuff happen. and make stuff happen via mind things. Also, this is big Mercury and big Aquarius energy, right? And so as we see Mercury moving into this space, then there's an opportunity to think with that and feel into it in some kind of way. Now, the thing that's going to happen here is we're coming up on a Mercury retrograde. That's not this week, but it's next week. As Mercury moves retrograde, then we're going to be like, it's not quite there yet. And we're going to have to go back. And Mercury is going to come back through this first bit of Aquarius and is actually going to move back into Capricorn for a little bit. So this Mercury ingress into Aquarius, it's not the real deal necessarily, but we can sort of start to see where we have some work to do or something like this. A year ago, I guess not quite a year ago, in April, I think I gave a talk called Toward a Relational Metaphysics in the Era of Air. It's on YouTube. You can find it pretty easy. But in that, I spoke about Mercury retrogrades and how Mercury retrogrades really point to places where there are errors or miscommunications, where there are misunderstandings, where we're thinking about things wrongly, or where there's room for improvement, especially as far as communication and narrative is concerned. And indeed, narrative is going to be a real big deal as we move into 2022. And so engaging deeply engaging the difficult things or the errors or the miscommunications, this kind of thing is going to be really crucial as we move toward building a world that we would prefer to be in. So there's something really interesting, potent, exciting about this. Mercury retrograde is difficult for sure, but and Venus retrograde, right? So this is both of our inner planets, right? The ones that are closer to the sun than the Earth is. Both of those are in this space, and it's all Saturn time, right? The Capricorn and Aquarius are Saturn signs, and so we've got this sort of like dealing with boundaries and borders and discipline and appropriate boundaries. I see appropriate boundaries showing up for a lot of people, and not just, so there's every year we hear people talking about like, I'm not going to let people treat me a certain way, and I'm going to, moving into the new year with, I'm going to do better in whatever kind of ways, right? And so this, in the first place, we're sort of engaging with ways that I haven't done as well for myself in the past year, right? Which is real big retrograde energy for sure. But then, this kind of, like, being with that and then devising new plans around it and getting into the new plan feels like something really worthwhile at this point. I actually don't really feel like this is New Year stuff, right? I feel like there's still so much review that needs to take place, so much interrogation of what we've been doing that is going to continue to go on for another month and a half, 2 months at this point. Before we start really getting forward into the new thing. So while, New Year's resolutions are great, and if you're going to start exercising or something like that, then, definitely don't wait 2 months to start making your life better or making better choices or these kinds of things. But if you don't necessarily have a plan yet, or if you don't have an action plan about everything, and you don't have a way that you've already devised as to how we're going to go about doing the thing, that's okay. This is a good time to really get in there and think about all the stuff that's going on. How have I been treating myself? Where have I been going wrong, right? There's a lot of, it's easy to sort of like point at other people and be like, oh, they've been treating me, or they've whatever, right? But there's a really good way of, Venus retrograde is so vulnerable, right? And so getting into that vulnerable space of like, oh shit, maybe I fucked up is a good thing to do here. Now, this is not, I'm not telling you to be super hard on yourself, and I'm not telling you to hate yourself or any of these kinds of things, right? This is ultimately a practice in self-love, because I know that I can do better than what I've been doing up to this point, right? And so it's that commitment to my own greatness that we can see coming on here. And with Capricorn. Capricorn is associated with ambition and drive and these kinds of things. This is a really good time to do those things and to work with new habits as well. Habits, routines, the monotony of everyday life. This is real Saturn stuff. Mercury is going to be moving into Aquarius, not only a Saturn sign, but also with Saturn. So there's something here to work with there as well. Mercury's station is ultimately going to be pretty close to Saturn. So that's something that we're going to be really looking at as well. So, you know, there's good stuff here for sure. But, you know, there's no rush. There's no rush. Everything is going to, you know, Jupiter, for example, Jupiter's all in Pisces and everybody's hype about Jupiter in Pisces, or I guess not everybody. There's like differing opinions about it. Some folks are like really worried about conspiracy theories or whatever. But you know, Jupiter in Pisces, that's super cute. But Jupiter is currently at the bends of the nodes under an overcoming square from Mars. This is like not time for the like super flourishing Jupiter stuff, right? This is time for the cold, difficult. You can see I'm out here in the snow right now. There's no leaves around. It's kind of cold and desolate. And being in that space is something that is really worth doing, so as to, you know, and this is how I feel about wintertime in general. There's this like cold freeze over situation that really prepares for the springtime. And so, and the spring is typically when I start to think about like newness and beginnings and this sort of stuff, right? And so we're in that period right now. We're in the cold, we're in the frost, we're in the review period. There's a shrinking going on. There's less is more at a time like this. So, you know, there's a lot of potential, especially in 2022. There's a lot of good potential. There's some scary transits that are getting a lot of play and this sort of stuff. But, you know, I'm really into the chaotic element of that. I've been talking about that for a little while, for a couple of years now. If the structures hadn't crumbled, then we wouldn't have access to all these great bricks that we can now build the new future with. And so, you know, we're now at a point where some structures have crumbled, and it's time to assess those bricks. You know, that's what these retrogrades, these Capricorn Saturnian retrogrades really speak to, is sort of evaluating the building blocks. So let's take a look and see what kind of things we can do. As always, thank you all for being here. Thank you for sending me a tip. Thank you for getting a reading. Thank you for hanging out with me, just hanging out to the end. I super appreciate. I personally have some big things coming up in 2022, and I am so excited to share this community with you all, and that you all are going to be here with me as we ride through it. Thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing y'all next time. That's not going to work as well with these gloves.